No chance of South there. Julie got a winner right in. Down goes Jackson.
The end of the 80s and the first half of the 90s of the last century will forever go down in the history of world boxing as the golden time of the middleweights. There has never been such a concentration of talent, stars, and superstars as there was in these three middleweight categories: the first middle, and super middleweight. And it is unlikely that there will ever be in the foreseeable future. But today I want to tell you not about the golden pages of boxing, but about one of the most tragic fights in its history, which took place on February 25, 1995, in which WBC middleweight champion Nigel Benn met one of the most promising and toughest punchers of the division, WBC middleweight champion Gerald McClellan. The story begins in 1988 at the National Amateur Tournament, Golden Gloves. In the semifinals, two American talents met in the ring, Roy Jones Jr. against Gerald McClellan. Gerald won. Roy Jones remembered this day for a very long time, as the next time he would lose would be in 1997 due to a disqualification in a duel against Montel Griffin, except for the scandalous defeat in the 1988 Olympic Games finals. The whole world waited for the rematch between the two best representatives of the American boxing school. In 1995, Roy reigned in the second middleweight. He defeated the former champion James Toney. The whole world was waiting for a big challenge. There was only one fight left for the first issue of the pound-for-pound ranking, a revenge match between McClellan and Jones. McClellan's career had developed rapidly, except for two defeats in a row in 1989 that dampened his career. The young boxer did not have the experience of protracted battles, and he twice lost to the decision of the judges. Over the next 5 years, Gerald did not make a single misfire. His first title was not kept waiting. At the end of 1991, John Mugabe was defeated.
The former world light middleweight champion, now all too vulnerable to heavy punching.
McClellan won the vacant middleweight belt in the fast-paced WBO version. Furthermore, in early 1993, Gerald won a major career victory in the 5th round against the Mighty Hawk, Julian Jackson.
As he goes upstairs, no chance of South there. Julie got a winner right in. Down goes Jackson. A left hook by Gerald McClellan almost sent him through the ropes. He is in serious trouble.
The WBC belt was added to the treasury of the formidable puncher. McClellan defended his belt and then destroyed Jackson again in the rematch by knocking him out in the first round. It seemed that nothing could stop the two-time world champion. Some people have a unique ability in that everything they touch loses its shine, deteriorates, and eventually dies. And one of the worst things is when they negatively affect other people. Don King did not spoil people, but he destroyed them. We have already released a video about Don King's relationship with Mike Tyson. If you want to see this story, we'll leave a link in the description. The next victim of the Don was Gerald McClellan. The first thing he did after signing the contract was to get rid of the only person who would oppose King, Coach Emanuel Stewart. King offered the eminent coach such a humiliating terms in his contract with Stewart that even with a great desire to work with one of the most talented middleweights, he was forced to leave the McClellan team. Don King planned to organize the long-awaited mega fight, a super fight against Roy Jones. However, Roy was boxing in a different category. Don was well aware that a unifying battle would give the greatest effect. The problem was solved early. Before the fight against Jones, McClellan had to defeat one of the second middleweight champions, and King's choice fell on the holder of the WBC title, Nigel Benn. Don and Nigel's promoter Frank Warren sat down at the negotiating table. It was decided to hold the event in London on February 25, 1995. I won world titles away from home. I was not afraid of anyone. Don King told us that he would bring a man whom everyone calls a smaller copy of Mike Tyson. I said I was ready for the battle. The words of Nigel Benn in an interview. Nigel Benn was 32 years old, while Gerald was only 27. Benn had owned the WBC belt for more than 2 years. This was his 7th title defense. However, American experts were tormented by only one question. In what round would Gerald knock out the champion? The most popular opinion was the 3rd round. All talk was about Gerald. No one gave Nigel a chance. At first the odds were 3-1, then 4-1, and before the fight, he was an outsider already at 5-1. Not many people paid attention to the problem that Gerald was switching to the 2nd middleweight. McClellan was one of the scariest punchers of the 90s. His record was impressive: 31 wins, 29 of them by knockout, with 2 defeats, both in 1989. But all this was in the middleweight. How much worse would the quality of his strike be in the new division? The question did not bother anyone. You see, adaptation takes about a year. When I switched from middleweight to 2nd weight, it was hard for me to adapt. My opponent stopped falling from my blows. It took time to take my power to a new level. I got it. Gerald's team didn't care. They miscalculated. They met a guy who could fight back. They looked behind me, said Nigel Benn. Benn was injured coming into the fight. His wife and team strongly recommended that he should wait to heal his injuries and defer his title defense to a later date. However, Nigel was adamant. King and Warren organized everything at the highest level. The hall was packed until people were turned away, and all tickets were sold out in a matter of days. Spectators expected a war, and they got it. The first round was a nightmare for the champion. After 30 seconds, he fell over the ropes from the most powerful series of blows from McClellan.
He's letting him punch. He's in trouble. He's down the ring. Seconds into the fight, he's through the ropes. Nigel Benn is down.
Nigel stood up. He rested his 5th point on the ropes, turned his forehead under the blows, endured, survived, and was able to hold out for the first round.
Can he survive this first? He wants that first round knockout. He promised everybody, and he's going after it. Benn's in trouble to the head again. A wild left that misses by Benn. Benn connects with the left hand. McClellan. Another right hand behind the ear, and he goes through the ropes. Now, let me tell you, 2 good shots while he's unprotected.
In the 2nd round, Benn came to his senses. His crown strikes at the jump reached their goal. Gerald tried to keep his opponent at a distance, taking advantage of his arm length. The fighters now and then were in the clinch.
Missed by McClellan. McClellan with a right.
In the 3rd round, Benn's right hand found its target. McClellan answered with his right, but his blitzkrieg strikes failed. The champion withstood a dangerous start to the fight. Beginning in the 4th round, the initiative was on Nigel's side. He worked hard, inflicted amplified side impacts, and simply did more. Gerald avoided the fight. Everything went according to plan. In the 5th round, an unusual moment attracted the attention of the audience. McClellan pulled the mouthpiece out of his mouth and held it with his teeth.
With the mouthpiece half out, he's got pain he better swallow it, because right now he's about to lose his mouthpiece.
In the 6th round, Benn, with a powerful blow to the right, knocked the mouthpiece out of his mouth. However, the champion believed in his success too much and took a break in the 7th round, and it almost cost him the victory. In the 8th round, the challenger again sent Nigel to the floor. Gerald's right had not lost its power.
A right hand by McClellan. That referee is supposed to stop it. Benn buckled over. A right hand by McClellan. Less than 30 seconds of the round. Down goes Benn.
Benn, however, like a phoenix, recovered once again and brought down his heavy artillery.
Toe-to-toe in the center. Here's Benn again looking. McClellan.
Strange things then began to happen to McClellan. The mouthpiece was sticking out of his mouth. He blinked a lot and appeared he was trying to avoid the fight.
Now the jab by McClellan. And McClellan still winking his eyes, still hurting him.
The 10th round was decisive and fatal. Gerald had already deliberately avoided open blow exchanges. Benn hit with his right, and then the challenger knelt down. He rose, but was knocked down again after another right uppercut.
Exhorting Benn. That's what we're talking about, what he can't afford to do. He goes down again. What's hurting him? Something is hurting him.
Referee Alfredo Asaro counted to 10 and recorded a knockout.
They had something. He's not going to get up. It doesn't look like. It's over. Nigel Benn.
The audience applauded. Nigel Benn defended his belt for the 7th time in a battle where no one gave him a chance. McClellan got up, reached his corner, and sank back to the ring. He then passed out.
But he is on his back. He's stretched out as Gerald. Now, take a look. They've turned him over.
And then an oxygen mask, a stretcher, and a run to the hospital. There was a moment behind the scenes where Nigel himself became ill and ended up in the same London hospital where his opponent was. Benn went through the necessary procedures and then went to the ward to visit his unconscious opponent. I was in a terrible state. I went through the examination and found out that Gerald was getting worse. I went into his ward. He was unconscious. I kissed his hand and went out. That day, I prayed for him, said Nigel Benn. The operation did not help. Gerald was paralyzed. He turned out to be confined to a wheelchair for life. He became blind and almost deaf. When it became known that Gerald did not recover from his injuries, I was devastated. I wanted to end my career. In 1995, I hung my gloves on a nail, said Nigel Benn. The fight received a great response in the media. The British Boxing Council had been heavily criticized for being negligent in checking boxers before a fight. Just 2 years earlier, Michael Watson, with incredible difficulty, was able to recover from injuries after a terrible knockout at the hands of Chris Eubank Sr. in a rematch. McClellan received $54,000 for the battle. The money barely covered the expenses of his team. Another $100,000 managed to be seized from his promoter, Don King, from the boxer's insurance policy. His sisters Lisa and Sandra take care of their crippled brother. In 2007, 12 years later, Gerald and Nigel met for the first time after the terrible events of that night in London. It was a charity event to help the injured champion. It was the sad ending of a bright career. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for new episodes about the great legends of the past.